For every couple out there who have spent at least 2 years and above as a married couple, it goes without saying that a lot of issues would have come up, some of them resolved, some of them unresolved. Now, for the ones that are not unresolved, maybe your partner has been packing them up somewhere, hoping for a better time. And what may have happened is that at this point, they are nursing feelings of hurt, anger. They are nursing feelings of inadequacy. They feel threatened. They feel insecure, amongst many other emotions they could be feeling. But because none of these things have been resolved, you find out that there's an anger that comes with it. And if that anger persists and it isn't addressed, it gradually becomes what we know as resentment. And resentment by itself is one of the primary intimacy blockers that can ever be presented in a marriage. Because the moment resentment becomes mentioned in a marriage, it gets things to a point where you find out that there's a lot of emotional distance between the couples involved. Now, at this point, I think it is very important for us to gradually dismantle the concept of resentment amongst other intimacy blockers. For you to get to a point where you can truly begin to dismantle resentment in a marriage, one of the fundamental things you must understand is that that activity by itself does not necessarily need to begin from someone else. The first step you must take is begin with yourself. You must embark on a self assessment that nobody has to force you to do. You start with yourself. You get to the point where you look at what I call the initial. The initial is simply you getting to a point where you observe your partner closely. And on close observation, you ask yourself a question. If this person I'm looking at right now, the first day I met them, the first day I got to meet them, was who I met, would I be married to them? The answer to that question could be yes. And if the answer to that question is yes, it simply means you have nothing to worry about. And there's absolutely nothing to complain about because there is nothing you're experiencing with them that isn't what you already know about. But if the answer to that question is no, this is when you move on to the second part of this exercise. And before I talk about the second part, it's absolutely important to also mention that if you and your partner have gotten to a point where things have settled down to the barest minimum you can ever have in a home, where you're living like roommates, this is definitely what you need to be listening to. Because these exact steps that are formulated over the past 13 years has absolutely worked for couples who have gotten to a point where there is little or no intimacy between partners. The second thing you must do is ask yourself, this version of your partner that you're currently observing, did I have a role to play in getting them to this person they have become? Did I have an input to make in getting them to become this person that I'm currently observing? And in some instances, the answer to that question could also be no. Instances such as drug use, where one of the partners stumbled on the fact that their spouse was using drugs. Now, this is somebody who had been using drugs prior to marriage, just that maybe you weren't aware of the fact. So, would you say that you were part of what got them to this point? No. But in certain situations, and mostly so, where the answer is yes, this is when you move on to the next part of this exercise. You bring out a piece of paper and you list your deeds. You see, by listing all the things that you feel you may have done to contribute to this entire process of turning your partner to who you're currently observing, this is the highest form of accountability you can hold yourself to as a human being. Because this is you, without anybody complaining, without anybody criticizing. without any atom of defensiveness on your part, scrutinizing yourself. List out all the things you may have done to bring your partner to this version of themselves that you're currently observing. And it is only after you have done this that you engage with your partner. Pick a very good time, not a time when you're fighting with them, not a time when things have gone wrong. Pick a very good time. And in a situation where there's already a fight and there's a Cold War ongoing, leverage on the power of experiential intimacy. Intentionally create an environment that is suitable for you to engage with them. Only after you have created this environment, leveraging the power of experiential intimacy, do you now approach your partner. Because now you've gone from a place of self assessment, you've gone from a place of self awareness where you're writing out the things you may have done to create this version of them that you're currently observing. And now you're moving outward to engage with a partner after you've intentionally created an environment that supports the conversation you're about to have. When you get to that point, which is the fourth step, this is where you tender whatever you have listed out to your partner. And in a non confrontational manner, you tell your partner that you have put in some work and have written out some things you feel you may have done to get him or her to the point where they currently are. And that if there's anything else that they think you may have done that's not represented on the list, that you would like them to put it down. After they have done this, under the assumption that there are other things they'd like to add to it, or maybe they tell you that everything you've written out is as is, and they don't need to put anything else. This is the point you now request that they also do the same for you. And after both of you have done this and created this list for each other, this is when you now move to the fifth step. The fifth step is where you add what we call recovery timelines by making this plan smart. You make it specific with the things you've written out, you make it measurable, you make it achievable, you make it realistic, and you make it time bound. Because at this point, what you're trying to do is make it a project that you and your partner will have to work on. At this point, whatever it is you have listed out for each of those points, write next to it the steps you intend to take to achieve it. And after writing down the steps, write down the amount of time you think it will take you to achieve it. And I would advise at this point that regardless of the amount of time your spouse puts there, double it. As human beings, we grossly overestimate our ability to make change. Double the timeline your partner has put in there. And after both of you have done this, this is when you now add the final touch on this step. The final touch is where you also append the penalty for not achieving this project or making this project work. If by the end or at the end or towards the time you elapse this entire timeline and you find out that only 40% of what you have there or 30% has been achieved, that by itself means that it's a failed project. If at the end one person has achieved a lot and the other person is still below 30% or 40%, it simply means that one person is putting in all the work. That by itself is also not acceptable. But if at the end of all of this, you find out that both of you have at least pushed to at least 50% and have achieved at least half of the things you set out to achieve, that by itself is encouraging. And both of you can delay the penalty that you have agreed upon and give yourself another opportunity to fix the other 50% that's there. But if it turns out that at the end there's nothing achieved, I think it's a good time for both of you to have conversations around the penalties you have put out. Penalties such as, are we doing it again? Are we getting separated? Or are we actually stepping out and getting a divorce? Because at that point, both of you need to have the hard conversations. While you are doing this and embarking on this project, the sixth step is also very important. You must meet weekly to go through what both of you have listed out and to see the amount of work that has been put in by everyone, to see the amount of progress that's happening around all the tasks, around all the things that have been listed, the steps listed to achieve each point, and the timeline that has been mentioned as the scope of this project. If you do this as a couple, without you knowing it, what both of you might also be doing is working on different forms of intimacy. Because while you are at it, there will be conversation. While you are at it, both of you might warm up to each other, and there's a bit of physical intimacy. While you're at it, there are conversations happening that allow you share a level of vulnerability with each other. That by itself is emotional intimacy. While you're at it, a lot of things could be happening that could also be improving what both of you have. Conversations leading to intellectual intimacy. It is absolutely important that couples who are in a place of struggle embark on these steps to recover your marriage. Because when you allow your marriage get to a point where the first horseman of criticism has set in, the second horseman of defensiveness set in, you've gotten to the stage where the third horseman of stonewalling, where you're protecting yourself from a partner who you perceive as either disrespectful or not good for you, has also set in. The fourth stage is what you call contempt. Contempt is when you treat your partner the way you will treat some random person who you don't even know. Contempt is characterized by a lot of abuse. At this point, this is how you save a marriage. Start from a place of honest assessment. Don't call your partner in. Don't get them to agree to what they did or what they didn't do. Start from yourself. It is only after you have conquered self do you approach a partner and ask for their input. Having said this, I truly hope that this particular lecture has been of immense importance and relevance to you and your spouse regarding your marriage. If you have any questions regarding everything we've spoken about, if you have any questions on anything we've discussed so far, send us a message and we will respond to you. Thank you so much for being a part of this masterclass. And if this was of any value to you, we would appreciate it if you could leave us a like, subscribe, turn on the notification icon so that whenever we drop new content, you see it. And if possible, if it worked for you, please leave us a review because these are the things that encourage us and make us understand that there's work being put in there and there's appreciation going in as well. We will leave the links and the review links and all below. Thank you so much. And until the next time we see again, I remain Temple Obike, and I'm excited that you were able to join me on this masterclass. Thank you.